Okay, we're going to try some food today. I'm going to try a new one, and this is one that's been a long time coming. It's pretzels. Supposedly, they're chocolate-covered pretzels, as I recall, from what I've been informed. It's been a long time coming. I really should have gotten to this way sooner. It says here they're healthy and free of no peanuts or anything like that. Not that I'm allergic or anything like that. It's very nice. Supposedly, from what I recall, these actually came from a plane. They're complimentary snacks that would have been on an Air Canada or something like that, or as I recall. But it's been a long time since I actually got around to testing them out, and yet here they are. Oh dear. Hope it's not expired or anything. Oh well. Well, I might as well go start. Well, better late than never. It's high time I did. Okay, so let's just try and get this into good position. Is this still? Yeah. The camera's still working. The camera is still working. Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay. Anyway. Yeah, so another candy tasting food. I wonder what's the point of all these sort of videos like this, because you can't really transmit, you can't transmit taste over the internet. You can't record it in a video. And there's no such thing as smell-o-vision, as much as I wish that was a thing when I was a kid. Oh, looks like I've made a mistake. These are not the chocolate-covered kind. They're just regular old pretzels, just miniature sized. Silly me. I guess that must have been another bag of pretzels I was thinking of. This one from a long time ago. So yeah, these things, they're just regular old pretzels from Crispy Kernels. This is no racetrack. What's with all the cars? Anyway, just some thoughts I've been having lately. I've been noticing so many gimmick license plates. Like the license plates that people drive around. They must have changed up the names, because they're always... They're not just a random collection of words and like letters and letters and numbers like usual, and not high up numbers because it's in an alphanumeric order or something like that. There was one that said divided, and the car itself was black and white, like just straight up right down the middle, like black on one side, white on the other. I'm like, what is this, a comic book? Is this what belongs to Two-Face? What's going on here? It's like a gimmick or something. Like, straight up comic books. And I'm thinking, well, I don't need to tell you about the news about comic book industry lately. Like this, even they're admitting things are pretty bad. You remember that controversy or something with comic... it's called that online comic book website that would Comic-Con or something. I used to try it out, but yeah, like they said, it's gone defunct. It's like they broke it even though it was working just fine. Comixology or something. It was the website. I actually did take a look at a few of them because some of them were being available for free. And yet I'm thinking, you don't need Kindle for this. You don't need Amazon's proprietor website thingy. I mean, we do have PDF files. Like, those can just be shared, and you can have all the text and images right there. They would have worked just fine. And I think, the more officially released products, the more they make those bad and not useful and like not optimized for use, the more likely you're incentivizing people to pirate things, I'm just saying. And that's not a good idea. That's no good. These pretzels are good, but yeah, whatever happened to Comixology? For a while, all the systems just got busted up because for some reason Amazon bought it out and they like, let's break something that works just fine. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And yet they did, and they made it worse. And eventually to a point where they don't have it anymore. And like last I checked, maybe I'm out of the loop out of things, but so much for my thoughts and dreams about reviewing comic books online, you know. Maybe that niche is already filled quite well, so I've heard. But I'm like, man, people wreck things that are perfectly good. It's sad. It's sad, really. Anyway, here I am eating some flavor of it. It's pretty stale. I can't even really recall when I acquired these. They were a gift, I suppose. Man. Now, don't worry about me. Doctors say my health is actually improving. Not that it's not any business I should... You know, I probably shouldn't even be sharing this, but I think I'm getting better. I'm healthier. I'll get plenty of exercise. That's none of your business. I shouldn't even have said that. Anyway. I am just up here, you know, just shooting the breeze. Just talking and munching and such. So, what's going on in the world these days? The more I research about it, the more, that's it. That's what I was trying to remember. The more I try to research the world and, the more I try to research the world and looking up what's happening in the world, and I'm starting to see problems. Well, of course, the news will tell you what's, you know, going on. There was a war in Ukraine. It's still going on. And ISIS was never really defeated. Now, was it? They're still around, unfortunately. And Israel's getting into all kinds of trouble. And I don't even know if YouTube would really appreciate me talking about this at all. But Israel has problems. And I hear talk that Armenia and Azerbaijan, or it might be getting worse, and I'm hearing stories that the northern part of Ethiopia has armed conflict, and it's had some already, and could get worse, because they're looking at that country to the north, Eritrea, and is China and Taiwan on good conditions anymore? I don't know. And what else is going on? Oh dear. Do you suppose Haiti and the Dominican Republic are going to remain on good terms with one another? I don't know. And there's more. It's funny, like there's seems to be more war and armed conflict happening recently, and I'm like, they say, the experts, they say that the world is more peaceful now than it used to be in most recorded history. Okay, I can see that. Yeah, that's true. But I don't know, guys. Looks like, you know, history is written in blood and written by the winners and such. And a very important lesson I've learned after a while, you know, throughout the years of my life, history doesn't really stop. We just sort of catch up to the current timeline. We can speculate as to what the future could hold. We speculate on what the future might bring us, but history doesn't really stop. There's always going to be something new, and there's always going to be something, you know, happening in the world, even if it's good or bad. Like they used to say, the news of today will be the history of tomorrow. And it's very true. So, people had this sort of notion after the fall of the Soviet Union, they're like, I guess history is just kind of over. That's the end of all the major conflicts in the world. And I'm like, no, it isn't. Not by a long shot. And another thing, concepts. World peace. It does seem like a good idea, and it's hard to get to because, we haven't really achieved it yet, despite our best efforts trying to make the world a better place. I think it was Gandhi who said, be the change you wish to see in the world. Be a nicer person, gotta not just do what you're told, but do what you want to change the world. Like, in other words, hopefully you want to make it a better place. Because even if you're the kind of person who just doesn't care about anyone else, like, you're going to have that kind of effect on the world in the things you do and the choices you make. And I'm like, I'm hoping I'm a good person. I hope I'm a good person. I hope I'm having a good influence in the world with what little it might be. Well, you're not going to do so well if all you're doing is sit around munching on snacks. Okay, true. But I'm thinking like things. How do I put this? We want to have better influence on the world. We want the world to be peaceful and better and a nicer place altogether. And history isn't really over. It's always going to continue. There's always going to be something new happening. Like, people, when they speculate about the future, like, when I was a kid, it would go in very different sort of directions. Like, oh no, what if aliens invaded Earth? What if robots went all crazy and started killing all humans? And what if, like, mutants are a real thing? And what if, all sorts of sci-fi stuff. Which is fun. Probably not exactly what's going to happen in the future. Just vaguely outside of the realistic predictions, I'm just saying. Now, by that sort of logic, people should remember history isn't over. Like, there's going to be world peace has not been obtained, and people are going to fight amongst each other. I wish they wouldn't, but they probably will. And, history's going to reflect that. And, people sometimes get this bizarre notion in their heads like, no one fights anywhere, anytime, anywhere. The world is just a peaceful place where everyone gets along. And like, not quite yet. No, not yet. Sorry, not quite there yet. World peace has not been obtained. Though I have wished for it for Christmas a few times. World peace. On the subject of that, I some thoughts I've had. A while back, I heard this story about this person who wanted their Dungeons and Dragons game to be set in a completely vegan world. A world that is, all vegan. No one wants to eat meat of any kind, even though they are ready and willing and capable of going out and hunting animals and everything else that we do to animals. And, not necessarily achieving world peace already. Like, okay, so you're going to treat animals with more respect than people? That doesn't sound right. That doesn't seem realistic. What are you talking about? Because that's the thought I had about hearing the story. Because it was one of those RPG horror stories where people, recount their complaints with one another about the time when they played RPGs, and you know the story. I'm watching so many of those, and it's just giving me a dismal, negative outlook on the whole thing. Dungeons and Dragons. But anyway, they wanted a vegan world, like where everyone is vegan and nobody does anything even remotely unpleasant to animals because they have such tremendous respect for them. Everyone treats animals with the utmost respect. Everyone, cares about their well-being. Now, when I understood that, I'm thinking that's actually even more than world peace. You see, you have to understand in order for that to happen, everyone in the world would have to share the same value. Everyone would have to value the lives of animals and their well-being and such, like, as a universal value. And if you're already willing to do that for animals, why aren't you willing to do that to people? Why aren't you willing to treat people with respect? In other words, if the world were already an all-vegan sort of world, it would already have to have world peace as a prerequisite, because people would treat one another with respect. People would want to do that. And I'm not advocating for veganism, and I'm not necessarily. I like lots of meat. You know that. I like plenty of that sort of thing. But the thing is, I'm willing to treat people with respect. I'm willing to, treat them with respect, even if they've done mean things to me, and I want to be a nicer person that way. Now, people have that value. People do that all over the world, everywhere, everyone. I'd say that maybe we already achieved world peace by that way, if that were the case. In the real world, that's not the case. So, like I was saying, that would be a very strange sort of premise for a world, a fantasy world that they're imagining. Now, of course, that story ended with the dungeon master of the game, the host GM sort of person, being rather displeased with this vegan player. And they're like, guys, I'm not trying to be an ass or anything. It's just that this one player, he's all about food. He loves talking about food, cooking food, tasting it. I'm trying to help that player. I'm trying to give him a world where he can experience culinary stuff, even among different cultures and even fantasy cultures where they're like, what's a dragon taste like? Well, you can find out. And other such nice things like that. He's like, but I don't like any of that. I'm vegan. I want to be vegan not only in the real world, but in the fantasy world. And I want everyone else to comply with me. And that's the kind of attitude why people don't have such a positive regard of vegans. I'm sorry to say, but you got to be nicer to people in order to get them to be your friend. You know what I mean? And so people, they get into those situations, and they're like, well, I'm sorry for describing all the animal abuse, but I'm trying to, explain to people that these are bad guys who hurt animals and people and such. Like, what, do you expect all the skulls placed on their totems and such to be made out of tofu? And they're purely decorative, sorry. And the orc, he just sort of wanders up with this big tribe with the spears and blood stains and such, and well, I'd like to order the tofu, please. It's like, okay, sure. And now if I were in the dungeon master's position and writing the story, I'd have actually done this real clever trick where you sort of halfway give them what they want. You think they're giving them what they want, but really it's a Faustian sort of deal. One of those, sly genies who, tricks and twists the words of the person making the wish. Monkey's paw sort of thing. So I'd come up to this vegan character as in disguise, even though the character is really some sort of fey being, some sort of magical godlike being who can alter the world and such, like Q. He just snaps his fingers and alters the world. And he goes up to this character and he's like, I see you're very displeased with our menu and such, and you're really uncomfortable with the way people are treating animals and such. If you want, we can make the world a vegan paradise. The key word being make. We can't really change the past, but we can make the world different if you'd like. Now, the person is either going to say, yes, I'd like that, or no, that's not good enough, let's change the past. Either way, the results will be the same. The person, the vegan, agrees to this Faustian deal. They shake hands, even though they don't know they're making a deal with the devil secretly. It depends. How evil do you think this really is? Because when you look at the results, you'll have to be the judge for yourself. But suddenly, in an instant, everything changes. The vegan and all the other characters in the RPG adventure awaken to a new day, in a new world entirely. This, essentially, is a remix of sorts of the Garden of Eden, or Shangri-La, or some other paradise on Earth. everything is peaceful, safe, happy, and everyone around them is neighborly and joyful and friendly. The only problem is civilization itself, by definition, has hit the reset button. This is exactly like the Garden of Eden. There is no history. There is no civilization. There is nothing of the past. The world is pretty much fresh and new, as far as anyone can consider. And therefore, they have no past or history or anything. Which also kind of means there's no way of getting at the character's backstory. And that's where it starts looking like a monkey's paw, doesn't it? So in this paradise sort of world, everyone's happy and jovial with all sorts of species that inhabit it. Not just animals, but also humans and a variety of other creatures that are sapient, and because there's already things like elves and dwarves and such in the fantasy world, and a whole bunch of anthropomorphic animals sort of people things. You know the type: dragonborns, lizard people, kitty cat people, tabaxis as they're called. And it's a can of worms in and of itself, but yeah. And now the premise, I'm just thinking of this as a game, sort of a campaign premise for a Dungeons and Dragons game. I'm thinking, what if you have these characters and they're sent to Eden, and it's vaguely inspired by the Forgotten City, that video game that was about ancient myths, like ancient Rome and Greece and Egypt and Sumeria, and all those ancient civilizations where they're talking about their concept of what is justice, what is divine retribution, what is truly fair, what is the golden rule, what is this law we should abide by to treat one another with respect, and most importantly, what is the enforcer of these laws. Every society, each one of those civilizations, has an interpretation for a god of death, someone who rules over the underworld and such. They have different names for him, but he's the same guy, and he's pulling the strings, and he's telling you what's right and what's wrong. And he's saying, if you mess up, if you break this rule, you all get punished, because that's the idea. To quote one of the characters in the game, he's like, if you think the decimation punishment, where 1/10 of the population perishes for a violation of the law by anyone, then I assure you, the golden rule is exactly 10 times worse. Because here's the reason why they call it the city that is forced to be peaceful. The city without sin. They call it the city without sin because absolutely no one can break the law. Absolutely no one. Because if any single one person does it, everyone in the city dies. Now, if that causes fear in you, you understand the kind of fear they're living under. Because one person slips up, everyone dies. They have these golden statues that come to life. They shoot you with a golden arrow and you turn to gold. You perish in this way. Or in some ways, actually, you're like frozen in place forever. You are in a perpetual state of you're awake and alive and frozen, cryogenic frozen, and it's that sounds horribly nightmarish, and it sounds terrible. But yeah, that's the premise of the video game. Now, what if we had something vaguely of that same sort of notion, where it seems like a peaceful sort of world you're wandering around through, but you now notice that if you do some terrible violation of the law, if you break the rules, if you try that apple on the forbidden fruit from that tree that God warned you about, yeah, you're going to get out of Eden. You're going to be kicked out. It's going to be terrible. So there's some sort of law enforcement like that, or some vague rule. The people within this paradise world, it all seems peaceful because no one's fighting amongst each other. And in this world, no one even has the concept of violence, armed conflict, or anything like that. People are just unfamiliar with the concept because they don't really know it. It's a peaceful world where they have no concept of such things. And the kind of choices the players make can have an influence on this world. Maybe they'll have a way of escaping Eden. Escape from Eden, you could call it. Maybe they'll leave the place and become the progenitors of a new race of humans. If you're an elf, then you're going to be the very first elf in the whole world. Or if you're humans, then well, hopefully you'll have more humans to, progenitate and produce more lineages and such. Like, but basically, yeah, it's like an Eden simulator where you can be Adam and Eve and just sort of like, all right, we're out of here and we're going to just sort of start civilization and such, like a biblical narrative like that. And I'm thinking, like, it's just sort of as the premise of a fantasy sort of story like that. Like the players in the game, that's one way of ending the game. Maybe there are more grim, cataclysmic ways of ending the paradise world, where the god's like, oh, hell no, you are not going to do that. I'm not approving of any of this. You're all dead. Lightning bolt comes down and crashes and kills absolutely everyone until everyone's like dead, and that's a grim ending. Like, and then of course, do you even really want to leave? I mean, it literally is paradise on earth. That doesn't sound so bad. Maybe you don't want to leave at all. I mean, it doesn't seem so bad. People are a bit difficult to interact with and get along with sometimes, but otherwise it's pretty good. It's just like, the premise is there is no history. The premise is it takes place in a world where there is no history at all. As far as anyone's concerned, they were all just sort of made one day. They were all just woke up one day fully formed, like happy, healthy, and they all just sort of get along with one another because they've got no concepts of being cruelty to one another and such. Like, only in the most bare bones sort of way. Like, gee, my neighbors wouldn't like it if I were always lying about them. Maybe I shouldn't do that. Like, I don't think my friends would really like it if I were always taking their stuff and their food and such, so maybe I shouldn't do that. And then vaguely, as a society begins to form, and like, okay, we got some rules here. You can't treat people rude. You can't just steal from them. And I would say you can't assault them, but I don't even know what assault is, so there we go. And that is my TED Talk and my pitch for a Dungeons & Dragons campaign. Because that would basically be the idea of it. We appeal to this vegan character, this vegan player, and sort of go all monkey's paw on them and wish that, we twist their wish around into the new premise of a campaign. Now, some of the players, they won't like that because, like, hey, look, there's no background for my character. My character can't, like, follow up on any of their past because they're not even in the same world anymore. They're in a completely new world. It's peaceful, but they can make out their own destiny, their own fate for themselves. Because, like I said, no matter if the person, the vegan player, agrees to the deal or asks for more, the same result happens. So that is sort of the thought I've been mulling around in my head ever since I heard that story. This has gone on and been quite a ramble, but it's really more about, campaign ideas for Dungeons & Dragons or something, more so than it is about trying food and such. Gosh, I hope the audio recording of this worked, because if I was wasting my time and breath over this, if I were spending all this time wasting my breath, oh man, that'd disappoint me so much. I sure hope there aren't any boogers up my nose right now, because otherwise I've pointed the camera at my face all this time and I have been making a fool of myself. Oh boy. Wouldn't be the first time, sad to say. Oh man. I think I haven't much else to say now, but yeah, that's just a thought that's been in my mind for a long time now. Just sort of a collage of media ideas. Go ahead and refine it for yourself if you want to play a game like that, a role-playing game. Any system, you just got the general concept of it. You don't need to be specific to any sort of mechanics unless you want to. And on another note, I gotta say, from my own personal experience, I vastly prefer Mutants and Masterminds to Dungeons and Dragons. I've tried out both, and I gotta say, Mutants and Masterminds is far more superior in my opinion. And the thing is, because it's like comic books, which is, a melting pot of genres already, You can go any direction with it. You want to be a Tolkien-esque fantasy? Sure. Wizards, magic, easy. Fantasy creatures, you can do all that, easy. And you want to do something sci-fi? Absolutely. Robots, cyborgs. I once played as a tentacle monster alien this one time. That's where that squid avatar came from, that concept you sometimes see. The idea, that character I have, the Nautilus guy. Anyway, you want to do something really gritty and realistic, like maybe vigilantes and armed conflict and more and realistic stuff. Easy, real easy. Absolutely anything. Like, you don't even have to bother with superheroes. Ironically, you can have a superhero game. Doesn't involve superheroes. Like, you can go all like pulp novels and pulp adventure stuff. I had some ideas about that. Like literally Tarzan audiobooks I've been listening to. Real nice. Things of that nature. Yeah, you can do it. And you can do all sorts of amazing things in Mutants and Masterminds as a role-playing game. It is so much better. And no one's going to send the Pinkertons after you. Just saying. No one's going to make all these bizarre arguments about, do these orcs represent black people? What about this playable monkey character? Who's offended by that, might I ask? And all that other bullshit you hear on the internet. You don't want to be all caught up in that nonsense, and I'm feeling really disappointed that I've been with myself for spending so much time researching Dungeons and Dragons and how to play that game, because I'm noticing, yes, it is much more complicated. It is a much more complicated game system. I know for certain it is, because I've been looking over it. It's noticeably more complicated. Backgrounds, the concept of character backgrounds, that actually wasn't in 3.5 as I recall. I have no memory of that being the case when creating characters. And then there's all these arguments I hear online because, D&D horror stories. All these arguments people make, like, that spell doesn't really work that way, or you need to interpret the rules written this particular way, and such like this. And then when you think about it, so many of the magic spells in that game are just like really overpowered when you consider how easily it is to get those spells. There's like multiple different types of mind control. Yes, real actual mind control, like magic spell. You snap your fingers at this guy and like, okay, now you're my best friend, or now you're my loyal employee. You'll do as I say. Go do this. Like, there's multiple types of mind control. And then people will argue, well, it doesn't quite work like that, and this particular spell doesn't work like that. And I'm like, okay, guys, really now? Like, that alone is such a crazy concept. As a superhero concept, mind control. That's the stuff that supervillains have. That makes you so powerful. Do you realize what that is? The power to control the minds of others. That is like supervillain powers. And, because seldom do the good guys ever do that sort of thing. They seldom resort to it. But player characters, they can do it. And they can get a hold of that power so easily. Like, really? When you really think about how powerful some of these magic spells are, like, really now, it just doesn't seem balanced when you compare it to the things you see in Mutants and Masterminds, because that does scale. Like, that does have scalable power levels, even for concepts that are really vastly different than one another. Superman and Batman don't have quite as much in common as you might think. Like, they behave very differently from one another. I'm just saying. But, these games, and people always have these horror stories where they argue about that's not how that works and that. Well, Mutants and Masterminds doesn't have that problem because it's rules, not rules as written, but like what you see is what you get. It's written right there on the can. You see, it says fireball powers. That's what you get. Like, here's the concept for you. A character has a superpower that they're able to create fire, like right out of their hands. They use it for offensive powers, you know? They use it as a special ability to attack the enemy with fire, shoots it out of their hands, you know? Okay, easy. Makes sense. Everything that's written out there in the game mechanics, in the how you create the character as a concept, you can make that. Yes, you can. Now, then the character says, well, what if I use this to illuminate the room? I just keep just a little bit of it near my hands and use it as a torch. Hold it. Logically, you could do that if you were creating fire, but you have to make sure you're capable of doing that in the mechanics of the game. There actually is a superpower function, an effect, that says you can illuminate the surroundings. You can change your surrounding environment, like illuminating it. Anyone can do that, because if they just get a flashlight, get their hands on a torch or light or anything, yeah, that's actually pretty cheap when you think about it, and you can do it. But logically, you could not do it if you neglected to put that into your character concept when creating it. So, strangely enough, that fire is not functioning as a proper illumination if you neglected that. And that's an oversight you don't want, and it's easily resolved, because if you're actually thinking about what the character is capable of and what they can do, and that's how you write out the character and create them in character creation in Mutants Masterminds. But in Dungeons & Dragons, you get all these bizarre things like it's easy to get fireball powers, but logically you can't use fireballs as a substitute for a lit torch, because that's mechanically not how it works. And like, how do you go about making a pyromancer or a fire-themed character that way? Like, no, you couldn't just collect all the fire-themed spells and magic. You'd have to like make room for it, and you have to decide what type of magic is this. Is it a wizard using their knowledge for spells? Is it a sorcerer who's drawing forth from their natural magic ability? Is it a druid? Is it a cleric calling upon a god to make it happen? Is it a warlock who's calling upon their patron deity to make it happen? And you get all these mechanical things that's all behind the scenes and under the surface mechanics, and like, I don't know, guys. It's such a different way of going about it. And then people, they try to plan out their character so far ahead of time. Like, not just like plans for when, like what they would do as a character, like, but I mean, like, each level, they already have it planned out what level they want. Like, once my character reaches level 5, I'm going to multi-class into this other spellcaster sort of thing so that my character can do that in X and Y, because this is what I planned for all along. And I'm like, oh my god. Well, how do you know what the future holds, man? How do you know what's going to happen in the future? How do you know that's what you're going to do in multi-class? Oh, you want to multi-class into cleric? Tell me, when did your character find religion, and what sort of feelings did they have inside them that made them compelled to do that? Oh, well, I didn't think of it like that. I just wanted to be able to heal people. Oh, good idea. Yeah, really compelling writing you've got there, pal. Yeah, great. Oh, so you're a sorcerer now. So you were magic all along. Great. That must have been a real revelation on yourself, isn't it? Well, no, it isn't. I just wanted to cast fireball, that's all. Like, great. Sure. Okay. This isn't really a food tasting video anymore. It's more about me rambling on about Dungeons & Dragons again. I'm not even sure if this is the first time I've spoken these words, because I think I've rambled on and kept it to myself, but nobody seems to be listening. I don't get it. I keep getting recommendations for D&D videos. It must be so popular, but no one's paying attention to me when I have something to say about it. Jeez. Oh, boy. Oh, man. Yeah. Here's the thing. When I was playing D&D 5th edition, it has a bad reputation for the people who are among them, the players and such. This was all before the OGL issue happened, and before the Pinkertons, and before all sorts of chaos and nonsense. It was already having a bit of a iffy sort of reputation, but things got even worse, which is why I thoroughly encourage people to go look for different systems and such. I haven't heard anything bad about Call of Cthulhu. In fact, I've only heard good things. You want something a bit more left-leaning, a little bit more political partisan? Well, I have heard of this thing called Thirsty Sword Lesbians. Yes, that is the name of the role-playing game. Oh boy, I've gleaned up quite a bit of information about it, and I'm thinking to myself, you know what? This isn't so very far away from a, erotic heterosexual fantasy. A bunch of guys get together, they invent up their own fantasy women, or waifus, as some weebs might say, waifus, or whatever, and they just imagine up a fantasy woman who's very nice, and they want to imagine all sorts of stimulating fantasies about her and such, and they can share those creations with their friends and get into all sorts of erotic adventures, because it's for adults. But then the book is all filled with propaganda one way or another, this and really strong left-right things, and you are obligated, and you must, absolutely must, show the utmost respect to these people we have listed here. Everyone, every gender, and okay, I can do that, sure. And and you also must respect fat people, and what's this about? And you absolutely must respect sex workers, and I'm wait, who said anything about that? What's this about? And you must always do blah blah blah, and show the utmost respect, and you're not allowed to question this, and blah blah blah, and rules, order, authority this, authority that, and I'm wow. I bet you have a lot of friends, don't you? Yeah. And okay, pal. And it's just, my God, the propaganda they built into this thing at every inch. And I'm and like I said before, it's, when you really think about it, it's really not all that different from something that's just fun and games. It could easily be, but you had to do that. Okay, because it's virtue signaling. All right. And then people say, no, that's not for me. And okay, that's what happens. So, yeah. So many games. I really did want to try out Monster of the Week, but that game got canceled. What other games are there? All the role-playing games. Some are directly based on franchises like Aliens and Star Wars and such. Oh man, I probably rambled on way too much. I'm just sitting here rambling. Train of thought lost. I'm sorry to say. Man. Okay, I think I've gone way too long now. I'm gonna call it quits right there. Yeah. Good night, everybody. Goodbye. Have a good day.